In our headlines on this Thursday, July 17th, here in South Korea, at least 2 people lost their lives amid the torrential rain across the country, while over 1,000 people were evacuated amid fears of flash floods and landslides. Meanwhile, today is Constitution Day here in South Korea, and to mark the occasion this year, a monument was unveiled on the front lawn of the Nat'l Assembly earlier in the day. And the country's top court has cleared Samsung chairman Lee Jae Myung of fraud charges, ending an almost decade-long legal battle over his role in a 2015 merger deal. We start here on the national front with news of the torrential rain across the country. I have our Pyun Ye-young standing by live on the line with the latest. Now, Ye-young, I hear there have been a number of fatalities.
Yes, Sunny, the ongoing heavy rainfall has already turned deadly. This morning, a man in his 50s was found dead inside a submerged vehicle in Seosan City, Chungcheongnam-do Province. He was discovered in a state of cardiac arrest and was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Another man in his 80s was found dead from drowning nearby, and one person also died in Dangjin City. In Gyeonggi-do Province, a 40-year-old man was killed yesterday when a 10-meter retaining wall collapsed in Ulsan City due to the rain. In total, over 110 people have been temporarily evacuated, mostly in the Chungcheongdo provinces and southern parts of Gyeonggi-do Province, where the rainfall has been at its heaviest. According to the Ministry of Education, over 400 schools have suspended classes due to heavy rain, with most closures concentrated in cities of Seosan, Dangjin, Asan, and Yesan, as well as Hongseong-gun County in Chungcheongnam-do Province, where every school in every district has closed. Facility damage has been reported at 166 schools, including leaking, flooding, and structural damage, although thankfully no injuries have been reported. Authorities are urging residents in low-lying areas and landslide-prone regions, especially across the Chungcheongdo and Jeollado provinces, to remain on high alert.
Right. And Ye-young, which areas are bearing the brunt of the downpour as we speak?
Right. The heaviest rainfall overnight was concentrated in Chungcheongnam-do Province, particularly Seosan City and Hongseong-gun County. In Seosan, over 110 millimeters of rain fell in just 1 hour, which is the highest on record there for July. By 5 a.m., total rainfall in Seosan reached 339 millimeters, and that figure rose to over 420 when including yesterday's totals. In Gongju City, about 40 residents were urgently evacuated after parts of their village were submerged. And additionally, Gwangju City and surrounding parts of Jeollanam-do Province are also now under expanded heavy rain alerts, with a flood warning being issued for Yongsan Bridge in Gwangju. In Seoul, a flood advisory was issued for the Torimcheon River near Sindaebang Station, and access to several streams is under control due to concerns of overflow. Traffic is also being controlled around low-lying areas, and authorities are monitoring major bridges and underpasses. Train services have been affected as well. Korea Railroad suspended general train operations on parts of several lines around 6 a.m. due to the heavy rain.
Before you leave us, Ye-young, do tell us a bit about the measures that is taken by the government in response to the rampant rain.
Well, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters held an emergency meeting earlier on Thursday and issued a Level 3 response, which is the most severe stage, later in the day. The flood and storm disaster alert had been raised to serious level. Emergency personnel are on high alert with disaster situation rooms in full operation. Fire departments are increasing their 119 call center capacities, and authorities are jointly managing real-time updates across agencies. A landslide warning has also been raised to the second highest level in major southern cities, including Gwangju, Daegu, and Busan, with the risk now categorized as serious in parts of Daejeon, Sejong, and the Chungcheongdo provinces. Interior Ministry officials have said the top priority is minimizing casualties, as up to 300 millimeters more could fall in the coming days. That's all I have for you now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Ye-young, thank you for that detailed coverage, and do keep us posted. In related news, President Lee Jae Myung has ordered an all-out response to the heavy rain. Meeting with his top aides earlier today, he called for safety inspections of high-risk areas, including underpasses, underground parking lots, and retaining walls.
이미 인명 피해가 발생하고 있는 것 같고 또 일부 침수 피해도 지금 보고되고 있습니다. 국민의 생명을 지키는 일에 작은 실수도 용납되지 않는다라는 점을 명확하게 말씀드립니다.
Linking the government's primary purpose to public protection, the President also urged for swift probes into recent workplace fatalities, strict accountability for those responsible, and stronger support for those falling through the cracks of the welfare system. Also, marking Constitution Day today, he proposed reinstating July 17th as a public holiday, calling it a chance to reflect on the spirit of popular sovereignty. And President Lee Jae Myung has appointed Park Yong-man, former chairman of the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to lead a diplomatic delegation to the U.S. The three-member delegation includes Park, along with ruling Democratic Party lawmakers Han Chun-ho and Kim Woo-young. According to Senior Secretary of Political Affairs Woo Sang-ho, the delegation is not being dispatched to address a specific subject, but to convey changes within South Korea in light of the recent transition of political power. Their departure date has yet to be decided. Meanwhile, at the Parliament, confirmation hearings for nominees of the Foreign and Economy Minister posts took place today. Our Kim Jong-sil has the latest.
Foreign Minister nominee Cho Yeon expressed confidence that an agreement on U.S. tariffs could be reached before the August 1st deadline set by President Donald Trump. When asked at Thursday's confirmation hearing whether the negotiations could conclude in such a short time, Cho said this.
It seems possible, though it's hard to predict. We are putting in our utmost efforts, and from the U.S. perspective, South Korea is not only a very important ally, but also a key trading partner, so I believe they will prioritize negotiations with us.
Cho also highlighted the potential for both countries to turn the crisis into a win-win opportunity by leveraging South Korea's strengths. If appointed, he pledged to visit the U.S. as early as next week to help finalize the crucial negotiations. Moving to security, Cho was asked whether North Korea remains South Korea's primary enemy.
North Korea is an urgent and existential threat, but it is also a necessary partner in dialogue for peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula.
Cho emphasized the importance of close cooperation with the U.S. to ease tensions with North Korea and create opportunities for dialogue. He also outlined plans to strengthen trilateral cooperation with the U.S. and Japan while encouraging constructive roles from China and Russia. Meanwhile, confirmation hearings for key economic positions also took place. The finance minister nominee Koo Yoon-chol highlighted rising inflation, declining household incomes, and worsening external factors, stressing the decline in growth potential. He vowed to lead economic reforms to boost South Korea's future growth. Industry Minister nominee Kim Jong-wan outlined plans to boost exports and investments, emphasizing trade policies to strengthen the national interest, especially in response to U.S. tariffs, and expanding global trade networks through agreements and APEC summits. As hearings continue, focus remains on how nominees' policies will shape South Korea's security and economy. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Today, that is July 17th, is Constitution Day here in South Korea. And in light of this occasion, the Nat'l Assembly shared a monument and prepared a time capsule to be opened precisely 100 years from today. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
The National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, the last bastion of democracy, are the words engraved on a monument unveiled on Thursday on the front lawn of the National Assembly, marking the 77th anniversary of the first proclamation of the Constitution. On the back, it commemorates the day the Assembly with the people blocked martial law troops, ending the decree's implementation and reaffirming its commitment to protect the people and strengthen democracy. Beneath the monument lies a National Assembly time capsule buried to mark the 77th Constitution Day, and it contains items that reflect the spirit of the times and will be opened 100 years later on July 17, 2125. The items include legislative and policy reports, notable bills, Dokdo-related publications, photos of the assembly, a backup gavel, and messages from lawmakers and staff to future generations. South Korea's constitution was promulgated in 1948 based on open democracy. It was last revised in 1987 after decades of authoritarian rule. To celebrate the anniversary, the National Assembly held a special ceremony on Thursday where Speaker Woo Won-sik highlighted the power of the Constitution.
This is the first Constitution Day since the December 3rd martial law declaration. In Korea, the people protect the Constitution, and the Constitution protects them. That's why the Constitution is powerful, and Korea is strong.
Woo also called for constitutional reform, saying this was needed to meet today's needs and to build a stronger democracy and improve people's lives. He floated the idea of a constitutional referendum alongside the presidential election back in April in order to address calls for decentralization of power following the martial law declaration, but withdrew this after a backlash.
We need to act before it's too late. Rather than a full reform, we should begin with small, gradual amendments that the National Assembly, government, and people can all agree on.
Posting on Facebook, President Lee Jae Myung called for a discussion on constitutional reform and urged the National Assembly to lead the process, pledging to work alongside the legislature to reflect the will of the people. Meanwhile, following several recently proposed bills to reinstate Constitution Day as a public holiday, attention is on whether it will become a national holiday again for the first time since 2007. 신하영, Arirang News.
In other news, an almost decade-long court battle against the head of Samsung Electronics has come to an end. Our business correspondent Kim Do-yeon has details.
After nearly a decade of legal battles, Samsung Electronics Executive Chairman Lee Jae Myung is now officially free of all charges. On Thursday, South Korea's Supreme Court upheld a lower court ruling acquitting the Samsung chairman of fraud and market manipulation. The case entered on a controversial 2015 merger between Samsung C&T and Jae Industries, a deal that helped ease cement control over Samsung Electronics despite not owning direct shares. The merger came as Lee was in the midst of inheriting leadership from his now-late father, Lee Gun-hee. Prosecutors argued the merger unfairly favored Jae, where Lee was the largest shareholder. But the top court ruled there was insufficient evidence that the deal or the related accounting practices violated the law. Lee's legal woes began in 2016 with a bribery case linked to former impeached President Park Geun-hye. He served a total of 18 months in prison over the course of 4 years until 2021 and was barred from holding an official role at Samsung for 5 years following his release from prison. That ban was lifted early after a presidential pardon in 2022 by then-President Yoon Suk-yeol, paving the way for his formal return to Samsung leadership. Despite rejoining the company, Lee remained entangled in the ongoing merger case, making frequent court appearances. His legal team celebrated an appeals court acquittal in February 2025 and famously left this comment.
I hope this decision leads to the defendant returning and concentrating on their work.
Lee's freedom from legal issues comes as Samsung Electronics has recently faced mounting headwinds. Its operating profit for the second quarter was slashed in half year-on-year, dragged down by weakness in its key semiconductor business, which accounts for more than half of total profits. Pundits say the legal issues didn't help and kept the company as a whole from making risky and bold decisions. But now at least the man at the top is no longer looking over his shoulder, and that may mark a turning point for South Korea's biggest conglomerate. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's automobile exports posted a record high for the month of June last month, driven by regional shipments and EV rebounds despite U.S. tariffs. According to the Trade Ministry on this Thursday, auto exports totaled $6.3 billion in June, up more than 2% on year. By region, shipments to the EU surged over 32% and those to Asia jumped over 35%. In sharp contrast, auto exports to the US plunged 16%, dropping for the fourth month in a row. The ministry also pointed out EV exports marked their first growth in over a year, soaring more than 11% in June on year. And beauty products are among the latest popular export items for South Korea, and their overseas shipments during the first 6 months of this year hit a new high. Our correspondent Park Chun-han files this report.
Once considered cost-efficient cosmetics for locals, K-beauty products have now gone global and become one of the must-buy items when traveling to Korea. Here, in the heart of Myeongdong, one of the most popular areas for foreign visitors, you can spot people from all over the world shopping for Korean beauty products. What started as a domestic trend has now become a key export driver.
I heard it by social medias and friends. We have a lot of channels in France that talk about this. So every French person wants to try because it works. So yeah. It's my first time. I never tried it, so I will try and see. We found out, well, through TV. I think it is well known that Korean beauty products are very good. And also friends and family who told us, oh, you're going to Korea, so can you bring me this or that, this product? Because they know that you are very famous for that.
The growth of South Korea's beauty product exports is surging at a dramatic pace, backed by record figures. According to the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, South Korea exported cosmetics to 176 countries in the first half of 2025, reaching a total of $5.51 billion, a 14.8% increase from the same period last year. By country, China, the United States, and Japan were the top three importers, accounting for 48.1% of total exports. Although China saw an over 10% year-on-year decrease in export value, it still ranked as the #1 importer. The United States and Japan, however, saw remarkable increases of over 17% and 15% respectively. A beauty industry expert says that Korean cosmetics are technologically advanced for their price and are creative in product development.
Cosmetics companies in South Korea are so technologically advanced and cost-effective that last year we became the third largest exporter in the world. They're incredibly creative and great at coming up with new products, which is why they're receiving this kind of attention around the world.
Another claim made by the same industry expert is that culture exposure and influence, such as through K-pop and K-drama figures, are attracting potential consumers to buy K-beauty products.
As K-dramas and K-pop have become more popular, people around the world are seeing more of Korean people's skin. I think that has contributed to a perception that Koreans have great skin because they use Korean cosmetics. Most of the products are now vegan, and there are also many functional patents behind them.
With rising demand from all over the world, K-beauty is now not just a trend, it's a new culture. And if the current pace continues, 2025 could mark yet another historic high, hopefully surpassing the $11 billion mark. Park Chun-han, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, Israel has launched airstrikes against Syria, and the U.S. is scrambling to resolve this latest outbreak of violence in the region. Our Lee Jae has more.
The Israel Defense Forces announced Wednesday that it had conducted airstrikes on Syria's military headquarters in Damascus. These strikes damaged both the entrance of the Defense Ministry building as well as a military headquarters located near the presidential palace. The moment of the attack was captured during a live news broadcast on local network Syria TV as the anchor reported on Israel's threat to continue attacks.
إن الجيش سيواصل مهاجمة قوات.
According to Syria's Ministry of Health, at least one person was killed and 18 others injured in the airstrikes. Wednesday's attacks come as Israel vowed to destroy Syrian government forces attacking Druze communities in southern Syria, demanding that they withdraw. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Wednesday that while the situation in Syria is complicated, it's a misunderstanding and efforts towards de-escalation will be made soon.
So we've been engaged with them all morning long and all night long with both sides, and we think we're on our way towards a real de-escalation.
The UN Security Council is set to hold an emergency session on Thursday following the Israeli airstrikes. The meeting was requested by the Permanent Mission of Syria at the UN and was endorsed by Algeria. Lee Jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, back here in the country, the South Korean women's football team has won the East Asian Football Federation Women's E1 Championship for the first time in 20 years. Led by head coach Shin Sang-woo, the team defeated Taiwan 2-0 in the final match held at Suwon World Cup Stadium on Wednesday. Chi So-yeon handed Korea the lead with a second-half penalty before Chang Sil-gi placed Team Korea's victory beyond doubt.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Wall Street closed higher on Wednesday after an early drop triggered by reports that President Trump planned to dismiss Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, which Trump quickly called highly unlikely. Markets tumbled mid-morning on Wednesday with the S&P and Nasdaq falling more than 1%, while the dollar plunged and Treasury yields spiked after Bloomberg cited an anonymous White House source suggesting Powell would lose his job. The confusion grew amid concerns about Trump's repeated criticism of Powell for not cutting interest rates faster. However, stocks recovered swiftly once Trump denied any plan to fire Powell. The Dow rose 0.53%, the S&P 500 gained 0.32%, and the Nasdaq Composite added 0.26%. Tech shares lifted the Nasdaq to another record close. In the Middle East, at least 20 people have been killed in a fatal crush at an aid distribution site in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a U.S. and Israeli-endorsed NGO, reported on July 16th that the deaths occurred during food distribution in Khan Yunis. GHF officials said that armed people believed to be linked to Hamas deliberately caused unrest by infiltrating the crowd to cause panic. The Hamas-run Gaza government media office blamed the incident on the GHF, while witnesses said security personnel had used pepper spray on the crowd. Palestinian health authorities confirmed 21 deaths by suffocation, asserting many victims were crushed in an overcrowded enclosure. In Iceland, a volcano on the Reykjanes Peninsula in the southwest of the country erupted in the early hours of Wednesday. This marks the 12th eruption in the region since 2021. Lava fountains burst along a fissure up to a kilometer long, sending thick gray smoke and orange lava into the sky. Authorities evacuated the nearby town of Grindavik, home to approximately 4,000 people, and cleared the Blue Lagoon geothermal spa. Roads around the eruption zone have been closed, but flights have not been affected. While Reykjanes has been particularly active since 2021, the officials described the recent eruption as relatively small. Researchers in the UK published a study in the New England Journal of Medicine on July 16th, reporting that 8 healthy babies have been born using mitochondrial replacement therapy, which involves the use of genes from 3 people and achieved a 36% success rate. Developed by Newcastle University and the Newcastle Fertility Center, the procedure transfers the nucleus from a mother's fertilized egg into a donor egg containing healthy mitochondria. The babies now carry nuclear DNA from both parents and mitochondrial DNA from a third donor. All children aged from a few weeks to over 2 years are developing normally with no signs of the inherited mitochondrial disease that they were at risk for. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Heavy rain warnings are being expanded and strengthened as it has been raining all over the country. Heavy rain warnings are in effect in the Chungcheongdo, Jeollanam-do, Gyeongsang-nam-do provinces. Heavy rain advisories have been issued in most parts of the country. The amount of rainfall expected today is 150 millimeters or more in southern Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongnam-do province, Daejeon and Sejong, and western Jeollabuk-do province, up to 120 or more in inland areas of Gangwon-do and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces, and 30 to 100 millimeters in the Seoul metropolitan area. You need to be thoroughly prepared for torrential rain until Saturday. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will start off at 24 degrees, Jeju at 26 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 28 to 30 degrees all over the country. A lot of rain is expected by the end of this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.